been given, at least that's the impression that I got, that the CPAP Company Limited were legally, that is the impression one got, that they were legally entitled to shut down the contracts, apart from the politics. So let's look at the legal argument, and I suppose that is the way I hope I'm answering Tombo. And as I said, you can read the judgment decision in The Guardian, which is fairly consistent and fairly comprehensive. So having said that, Eastman was the first case which was an independent contractor, and he applied to the court to have the court grant him an injunction against the company on the basis that the termination provision in the contract, the initial termination provision in the contract, was unfair and was harsh, and therefore was in breach of the rights of the independent contractors, and as such, the shutting down of the contract, the termination of the contract, was unfair in accordance with the Unfair Contract Terms Act. So that was one of the arguments. The other argument that they put was that the contract was unfair in terms of in respect of its terms, and that also they argued that when you look at the provision, I think it is clause 15 of the contract itself, when they talk about termination, it did say that they could terminate the contract, that is, the contractor could terminate the contract without cause upon 30 days notice, prior notice, or payment in lieu of notice. So either you give a notice of 30 days, which means that the contract continues for the 30 days, which means that you have to continue to pay the contractor and pay the employees during that 30 days. Or instead of doing that, you can then pay them off one time. And you're talking about a lot of contracts, and this is millions of dollars you're talking about. And what they also argued, that Eastman also argued that the contractor, CPAP Limited, did not give the notice and did not pay the requisite monies in lieu of giving notice.
Yeah, that basically, Minister Padarat had to come the next day and say, oh, well, we'll give them a month.
You know,
and my issue with that was, what made it very transparent was, if that was your intention all along, you would have said that the first day, because how hard is it to say that the first day? The fact that you came the second day, once this all came out, tells me that on some level was damage control. But the implication of this is that wasn't just damage control in the court of public opinion, that was legal damage control.
That is exactly it. And that is what I want you to understand. With all the politics that they want to play, at the end of the day, the law that would override any politics you're playing, because they didn't jump and decide to pay the contractor. They did that because the court said that they were in breach of the contract. The court said that the termination clause in the contract, was a 2022 contract, says yes, you can terminate without a breach. It doesn't have to be a breach on your part or their part, but if you do that, either you give a 1 month's notice of termination, which means that the contract continues for that 1 month, which means you have to pay the contractor and his workers, or you give them money instead of giving them notice. And they didn't. They gave them immediate termination, as far as I understand, and did not pay them. And that is what the court decided. And that is why the minister turned around and said, oh, well, we wouldn't pay them the 1 month's notice. So you know what that means? The law will trump, no pun intended, the law will trump the corruption in politics anytime. So you have to be very cognizant of the legal implications of these cases. So going back to Eastman, so Eastman argued in the relief, and they were saying they were entitled to a number of reliefs. Their claim was that, as I said, the initial clause, which said without breach, that they could terminate without cause, provided it gave the notice or salary in lieu of notice. And they had not done that. 30 days prior written notice or payment in lieu thereof. So that is what they were arguing. They said that was not done. And as a result, they asked the court to give them the certain reliefs. And among the reliefs, they declared that the termination notice was invalid, that they also stated that it was unfair and unreasonable and in breach of the Unfair Contract Terms Act. And they also asked the court to grant an injunction against CPAP Limited, restraining them, that is CPAP Limited, Lord, I just lost it, CPAP Limited from being able to exercise its powers to terminate the contract. So that's what they asked for. Now, when they asked for that, what did the court, and this is at the High Court hearing, at the High Court hearing, the judge in that High Court hearing said, listen, you cannot get the relief that you are seeking. Why? because you, that is the independent contractor, is in breach of the clause expressly provided in the contract that you have to go to either mediation or arbitration before you come to the court. You failed to do so, you went straight to the court, you did not follow the process. We're not dealing with the substance, you know. We're dealing with the process. The process of there's a breach that you go now to mediation, and from mediation, then you go to the court. They said you did not do that, you went straight to the court and you breached clause 17 of the agreement. And therefore, you were not entitled to the relief that you were seeking from the court. However, what the court did, that is the High Court decision, which is what I suppose made the company not look that very badly, is that what she did order is that in relation to the fraudulent misrepresentation, that there was sufficient grounds, that there was sufficient evidence, or sufficient, I should say evidence, sufficient grounds for having that matter, because once you deal with a fraud, you deal with criminal wrongdoing, for the matter to be sent to the DPP for the DPP's consideration. So at the end of the Eastman case, which was decided in August of this year, the court determined that no, the contractors could not get the relief that they sought. They could not get an injunction. They could not get the contract reinstated. They could not get the relief that they wanted, the declaration that they were seeking, because they had been in breach of the process of not going from mediation and then to the High Court. Not only substance. When it came to the fraudulent misrepresentation, which the court considered independently of that, the court determined that based on the fraudulent misrepresentation which occurred between the chairman and the CEO, in that the chairman, I think, was said to have misrepresented to the CEO that the cabinet had approved the extension of all the contracts to 2029. She was of the view that, let me see, she said the serious matters concerning the extension of the agreement to September 2029 necessitate the granting of a stay of the claim and proceedings and refer of all the documents filed in this action to the Director of Public Prosecution for consideration. So at that point in time, Eastman's case in August, there are two things that went against them. Then came the Court of Appeal decision, and that is important because what happened in the Court of Appeal decision is that, yes, the Court of Appeal did uphold the decision of the trial judge, sorry, not the High Court judge, not a trial, High Court judge, in that they did agree with the High Court judge that the contractors, that's Eastman, had breached the express provision of the contract that they were to go to mediation before they came to the court. They said it was clear that they did not do so and that therefore they were not entitled to the relief that they were seeking from the court. That is true. But in this matter was heard in November. However, when it came to having the matter sent to the DPP, I don't know if any of the media reported it, but the language of the court was extremely strong. What they said in regards to the matter being sent to the DPP, they said it was demonstrably, plainly wrong. Demonstrably, plainly wrong for the High Court judge to refer the matter to the DPP. And they gave their argument, they gave their reasons, I think, at paragraph. They talked about alleged fraudulent misrepresentation. It starts at paragraph 83, so you can read it yourself. It's available online. It says that it is not, it said, refer to the DPP. The trial judge, in referring the matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions, was exercising a judicial discretion which could only be reviewed by this court in circumstances where the exercise of that discretion was demonstrably plainly wrong. That's paragraph 85. It said one aspect of a plainly wrong test where a trial judge has not taken into account relevant factors. He said, firstly, the allegation of lack of cabinet approval for the extension of the contract to 2029 had not been tested, untested, whereby cross-examination or otherwise. In fact, they could not have been at that stage. They were not and could not at that stage have been the subject of any findings of fact by her. Further, this is what they said again in paragraph 87. As she noted in paragraph 52 of her judgment, there was no evidence so far that the claimant, which would have been Eastman, claimant or appellant, was involved in any aspect of the fraudulent misrepresentation alleged on the basis of renewal of the contract. So they're saying that Eastman had nothing to do with it. If there was fraudulent misrepresentation, there was nothing to show that they were involved in the fraudulent misrepresentation. Paragraph 88, they didn't end there, you know. They said, yet further, the allegation of fraudulent misrepresentation involved persons who were not party to the proceedings before. It was therefore premature for the trial judge to have exercised any discretion to refer the documents filed in the action which comprised untested evidence to the DPP for his consideration. This was especially so when no opportunity to respond had arisen in the proceedings for parties in respect of whom serious allegations had been made. The referral of the court to the DPP on such incomplete material was therefore premature and plainly wrong. Should it be necessary for this matter to proceed further, it would be prudent for any continuation thereof to be before another judge. You can't get stronger than that, you know. I don't know why the media didn't report that, you know. Or, I mean, based on what I read, I know the matter was that the court set aside the decision of the High Court to send the matter to the DPP for the consideration, all the files that were filed in the matter to the DPP for his consideration, because a fraud is a criminal wrongdoing. But I can't recall reading in any newspaper the extent to which the Court of Appeal strongly opposed and gave their strong opposition to her having sent the matter to the DPP. They said it was untested, there was no cross-examination, it was premature, and didn't I say plainly wrong, you know? I mean, this is the Court of Appeal, they demonstrably plainly wrong. They went from paragraph 85 to 88 to show why that matter should never have reached to the DPP. And I do not understand why that in this matter, that the decision and the rationale that the Court of Appeal gave was not fully ventilated, because I think it would have made a bit of a difference in how people looked at the whole CPEP matter. So the order of the court in this case, that's the Court of Appeal decision in Eastman, and then we go to Tombo, and that was where we will end. We go to Tombo. So the Court of Appeal decision in this case, they ordered the order of the trial judge that the claimant, which would be Eastman, and now they were appellant because they were appealing the decision of the High Court, that the claimant, quote-unquote, appellant's action and all other proceedings our state is affirmed. And that is because Clause 17 clearly said, this is the process, you did not follow the process, therefore you cannot get the relief you're seeking. But remember, process is not the same as substantive issues with respect to the contract. Next thing, they said the order of the trial judge that the registrar of the Supreme Court is to forward a certified copy of all the documents filed in the action to the DPP for his consideration be set aside. And so you understand, at that point then, at that point, which is November of this year, when the matter went to the Court of Appeal, what the court stated as far as the matter was concerned, that one, yes, as far as the process was concerned, the Eastman did not follow the process, and therefore they were not entitled to the relief that they sought from the court. When it came to the issue of sending the matter, referring the matter to the DPP, I mean, I don't know how more strongly the Court of Appeal could have stated. Do you see how strong they were? They were very, very strong. You know, I mean, and I find it very strange. At least I cannot recall reading in any media report that, apart from saying that was the order of the court, there was never any statement from, and you see, judges have a way of sending a message to you, you know. They have a way of telling the public what they think about what you did. And they clearly, I mean, as judges, they clearly disagreed, and strongly so, with the High Court judge's decision to send the matter to the DPP. Because what do you think you're doing already? The political arm of it is that there's corruption.
Yes.
Okay? And the headlines are all talking, screaming corruption, corruption, ghost gangs. And then on top of that, you're now saying, well, you know, between the Edward, which is the chairman of CPEP, and the CEO, which is Eddie, there's fraudulent misrepresentation, and it's enough for you to send that matter to the criminal investigation by the DPP. What do you think it does to the matter? Yes,
because, no, I mean, that's the point, right? The fact that a judge basically said that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm paraphrasing, it's inappropriate for you, or you should not have sent the matter to the DPP. It now brings to light the question, Because it seems as though somehow the people in charge, and this is not unique to the current administration, you could argue on some level we saw parallel things from the previous administration.
Absolutely.
But the court of public opinion is not the courts.
Exactly.
And the emotional judgments of the court of public opinion is not the same thing as the law. Because you're telling us there's corruption, and this is the thing that seems very common now, right? In 2025, after I don't know how many years, this seems like a current occurrence. Politically, they say corruption. Legally, they can't prove nothing. So now what
why not? And why not?
What does that, where does that leave us? Because now I have questions, and hopefully everybody does, with regards to the validity of this whole exercise being done in this manner. Because yes, I will agree, we all perceive there was some level of corruption. But just because we have a consensus that we think something is true does not necessarily make it true. More importantly, society cannot run that way. That's where you got the Salem witch trials. Everybody had a consensus. Didn't make it true. Didn't make it right. So now there's a wide implication there, but I'll leave that for you.
I think, you know, what you're saying is correct. The problem, of course, is that if you tell people on these strict legal arguments that the independent contractors were not wrong, I don't know how much that was, you know.
But if there were ghost gangs, you know, it should not be that hard to prove ghost gangs and false, you know, falsely claiming labor and money and wages that, you know, was based on fraudulent activity.
Yeah, but you see, unfortunately, the difference between the politics and the law. And if they continuously flooded the media. I mean, I could remember reading a story, something like 8,000 of those contracts with ghost gangs. I mean, when you read it, obviously you would be incensed. Obviously you're feeling that your tax money is being wasted. You know, there already has a bias or prejudice against CPAP, which I do not agree with, by the way. But nevertheless, I do not agree with it because I do think that people are looking at CPAP on the wrong way. If you're looking at CPAP as a means of employment, I do not think it's a part of a social program. All these so-called developed countries have that as part of taking care, creating a nurturing society. You don't only want to create an innovative society. You don't only want to create a society where people can learn to fish and have the educational opportunities, but you also want to take care of those who can, just like a family. Politics is the macro of a micro of a family. So you want to take care of, you want to give opportunity to those who have a contribution to make to the country and therefore the benefit. But there are those who cannot, will not, shall not work, who are in a position of vulnerability. What do you do with them? You let them stay home, or you create some sort of employment opportunity and give them a level of distinction, give them a dignity in having a contract. And by the way, when, yes, Patrick Manning brought about that CPAP contract, it was not just to add environmental protection, because the environment is really important, as we know nowadays. Environmental enhancement, environmental protection. It wasn't just that, it also had a component where you skills training. Many people who did that program, just like the URP, which Mr. Pandey intervened in, these people were able to learn how to do a simple account, run their home, run a small business, and for the population to see so disparaging about what CPAP is about, is then you do not want to be on the Human Development Index, on the developed nation status. That is part and parcel. What do you think countries that we admire, Norway, I'm just calling the countries that we admire, Norway and Sweden, who score high on the HDI. That is what they do. What is wrong with creating employment? And as I already said on another occasion, when I spoke about one of the economists, Dr. Theodore, maximum propensity to consume, these persons do contribute to the economy because they create employment. They cannot jump on a plane and go to Miami. Most of them can't anyhow, and go and spend their money there. They'll spend their money in Trinidad.
And don't take Karen's word for it. The central bank governor basically pointed to that
correct.
Very same thing.
Absolutely. The central bank governor talked about the impact of having thousands of people outside of the labor force participation rate. So from an economic point of view, from a nurturing environment point of view, I think we have a misunderstanding of what CPAP is supposed to be. If CPAP is supposed to have people who are going to work and to provide some sort of economic benefit to the country in a direct way, Well, then we, okay, well, no, it's not doing that. But look at who are the cohort. So I have a really strong view on it. And I think that the politicians were very, very unfair. I am going to say that. And heartless and unkind. And let us be honest about it. Let us be honest about it. If you look back at previous years, one of the reasons that other parties were against CPEP and URP, because we know, and it is true of all parties, that they use the CPEP and URP to make sure you come to meetings, to make sure you wave the flag, and hopefully you vote for the party, because that's how you're sure, if you support us, you will get a job in CPEP. So it's true of both. It's not true of one, it's true of both, and that is why there is this fight. The fight is not about, it's so heartless, it's so unkind to begin with, and it's politically tainted. The reason you want to do what you're doing is you're not, I mean, this is just how I feel about it. You know, it's not really about caring about those people, really. It's looking for your political cohorts and using some justification, which you know will sell with anyone. You talk about corruption. But why you didn't plead it? Why you didn't say that? You did not say that in your pleadings. You did not argue that in the court. What you've had to argue when you go to court is whether the contracts that you entered into, that CPEP entered into with the independent contractors was valid or null and void. And that is where Tombo comes in. The reason why Tombo became so important is because what you learn is that Tombo did not disagree and was not against going through the mediation. They were prepared to go through the mediation. They were prepared to go through the arbitration before coming to court. So the argument that was used both at the High Court and the Court of Appeal in the Eastman case, in the Eastman case, that clause 17 of the, it's a little joke here, clause 17 of the contract, that they had failed to follow the process, and that was the reason why they were not entitled to the relief that they sought, that is Eastman. Yet they could not use that against Tombo. They could not use it against Tombo. So what did Tombo do? Tombo brought an action against CPEP. And what they argued, among the arguments that they put forward, let me see, and this is in December, they brought an argument against CPEP and claimed that the contract, there was this contract in 2025. That's the one where they extended the period of the contracts, CPEP contract to 2029 by virtue of an addendum. Addendum is like a supplement to the original contract. So they are saying, number one, the original contract that was entered into by all the CPEP contractors, the clause that said that termination without cause, provided that they will either give a notice of 30 days or paid payment instead of the notice, they are saying they will never pay the money. And now CPEP says, well, there's no precondition that the payment had to be simultaneous. But the argument that the Tombo made was that, one, that the payment in lieu of a notice was never made by CPEP. Number two, that even the termination provision in the contract, which in the 2022, which is without cause, it was unfair and harsh and not in keeping with the Unfair Contract Terms Act. Number three, they said even if you go ahead and you, instead of using the 2022 contract, you apply the 2025 contract, which was entered into just before elections and which extended the period of the contract to 2029, that the CPEP failed to comply with their own addendum, which is a supplement to the original contract. So the bottom line is this. Tombo had a number of arguments that they put to the court that's why their contract should be allowed to be granted an injunction against, I think the injunction or stay of execution, but it's about the same thing until the High Court hearing, which means it's about 2 years down the line, which means that the contractors will keep on working, which means it becomes even more difficult for CPEP to dismiss these persons if they have to continue working while the High Court matter goes all the way to the Privy Council. So what they wanted was a declaration, and they wanted an injunction basically saying that the contract with CPEP Limited was a valid contract and that the attempt by CPEP Limited to end the contract and terminate the contract was unlawful. And the reason why this was different from Eastman, if you listen, if you followed the line of argument, When it came to the High Court, when it came to the Court of Appeal, both courts, High Court and Court of Appeal, agreed that the failure of the independent contractor to go through the process of mediation before coming to the court was in breach of the contract, and therefore they were not entitled to relief that they sought. In Tombo's case, they could not make that argument. They could not refer to Clause 17. So instead of referring to the process argument, they had to look at the validity. And that is why Tombo is important, because what happened, and this is key, what happened, this is December, I'm trying to pick it up. What happened is that when I believe CPEP realized, but I'm only assuming, that they would have to, that Tombo probably had a good argument, had a good rationale for wanting, so yes, this is what they asked for. They asked for damages for breach of contract. They asked for reinstatement, means that if nobody had lost their the contract, all parties, the managers, the independent contractor, the workers, be reinstated as if there was no break in the contract at all, which means that any payments that should have been made whilst they were out of work during that period will also have to be paid. This is millions of dollars we're talking about. And they also asked for a declaration that the contract was unfair and unreasonable, and so on. So they made a number of arguments, and what happened was CPEP, now remember they couldn't go to Clause 17, couldn't use Clause 17 in this case. So what CPEP attempted to do, as the company attempted to do, they applied for summary judgment against Tombo, and they also applied for the matter to be thrown out. Their application for relief to be thrown out. They were not successful. And the reason for that is, when they made the application for summary judgment, one of the things about summary judgment, as the words imply, you are not going to trial. They're saying you're wasting costs, you're wasting time to have this matter go to court, have a hearing, have the matter witnesses called, etc., when the case is so clear that you are obviously in breach and you are in default, that there's no point in the court granting you, allowing you to go ahead with the matter. So we are going to grant the application for summary judgment, which means that it's as if you had gone to trial, and at the end of the trial judge had found in favor of the applicant for summary judgment. That is what the effect of summary judgment is. So it's a very powerful tool which CPEP attempted to use against Tombo, and guess what? They were not successful. That is why you got the headline in The Guardian, which gave a glimmer of life to the Tombo case, because in Tombo's case, they could not use the clause 17, because that did not arise. The case with the DPP, demonstrably, plainly wrong, what the High Court judge did in terms of fraudulent misrepresentation. So that, as far as I'm concerned, that's another loss. And finally, because Tombo was raising the issue that, listen, we have issues that need to be tried, what they call triable issues. And what the court has to determine, that is key. And I'm going to look at the final decision, paragraph 25, I think. When the Tombo says you cannot grant summary judgment to CPEP Company Limited, and you cannot set aside the agreement with the summary judgment, you have to show that your case has a reasonable prospect of success. Reasonable prospect of success. So when the court, I read it for you, paragraph 20, let me read, paragraph 25, right. So paragraph 25, summing up everything, this is what the judge said. Considering all the above arguments, the court is of the view that there are triable issues, meaning that, listen, what Tombo is saying, there are issues to be decided, whether the agreement was valid or not. We need to listen to what they have to say, right? That's a different thing from saying process, you know. He's talking about the substance of the matter. So he says, considering all of the above arguments, the court is of the view that there are triable issues of which the claimant, meaning Tombo, has a realistic prospect of success at a trial. And in this regard, the defendant, which is CPEP Limited's application for summary judgment is refused. So you understand now. And then he went on to explain what reasonable prospects of success means. And the order he made, which is the end of the case at paragraph 31, he said, have regard to the foregoing analyses and findings, the order of the court is as follows. Defendant, meaning CPEP's notice of application for summary judgment and to strike out the claimant, which is Tombo's claim, and statement of case is dismissed. Is dismissed. Number 2, CPEP, which is defendant, shall pay to the claimant, which is Tombo, costs of the notice of application filed on the 7th of May 2021 to be assessed pursuant to civil procedure rule, anyway. And number 3, but this is okay, this is going into too much detail about costs and so on, but you know what it means? It means that the court was satisfied on the substantive issues that Tombo had tribal issues and had a reasonable prospect of success in putting forward their issues before a court, and that they could have succeeded if the matter went to trial. That is a significant decision. So to the person who called in and asked in a perplexed voice, concerned voice, puzzled voice, what was the implication of Tombo? Well, as I said at the very beginning, the headline from I think it's The Guardian, really does sum it up, because what it does is sheds a new light on the matter. So in summary, this is what we can take away. And this is what the combination of Eastman Court of Appeal and now Tombo case has brought in relation to the CPEP. Take away the politics. Take away the ghost gangs, okay? Because that's what they want to tell you. I'm not saying there may not be ghost gangs, but are you going to shut it down or are you going to restructure it? If it has ghost gangs, are there means by which you can, because what you're going to do, you're not ever going to have these contracts again?
Well, they have blatantly replaced CPEP with a lesser version. Basically, what CPEP was is guaranteed to be dead at this point, because they're saying, oh, well, you know, community.
Yeah, but you know what it is? You know what it is? They get to choose their own contract.
Yeah, basically grass cutters, you know. No, but my point is, they're now admitting it. We're not trying to have anything aspirational. Just cut the grass. That's what you're there for.
The politics of it is this, that we now, because we shut it down, we're not going to restructure. We're not restructuring. We're shutting it down. We're going to choose our own independent contractors. Wink, wink, as Philip Alexander says. Wink, wink. We're going to choose our own independent contractors. And the independent contractors will then choose his own employees, etc., etc. So politically, there is a value in shutting it down and to tell the national community. And I am not saying, so please do not come behind me and say, hey, you know, this thing have ghost gangs. I'm not saying they don't have ghost gangs, you know. But is the answer to shut down or is it to restructure? And why are you not restructuring rather than shutting down? Why are you not doing that? Why are you not doing that?
Because the people, yes, they're ghost gangs, but they were also, at the end of the day, people were cutting the grass, right? Because we saw the grass being cut. So the ghost gangs cannot justify their dismissal.
I guess I look at it, you know, from the Vision 2020. That's probably, you know, my mindset. And therefore, you look at the 5 pillars, and one of the pillars is creating a nurturing society. And I think we forget that what is the purpose of CPEP, the broader objective of CPEP. If you want to look at it in narrow, they're cutting grass, they're not cutting grass, and they think, but if you're going to do that, okay. But if you want to develop nation status, if you want to see your country go high on the Human Development Index, you are going to cater for those who cannot, shall not, or will not work. Many of the people who are in that program are the most vulnerable in our society. So that if you're giving them work to do, which apparently, based on the responses that I have heard, shown that they've said, where are the CPEP workers, the grass growing tall, so clearly they are doing something. They're clearly enhancing the environment. They clearly protect the environment. So clearly whatever they are doing. But apart from that, look at who you're going after and why you're going after them. So the Tombo case, to answer the caller, and thank you very much for calling in and asking the question, because it forced me, in a sense, to really look at it in a more incisive, more in-depth way. And what it really is saying to me, if I had to sum it up, and of course, maybe you can accuse me of bias, but I probably am biased because of who the cohort is. It's really not right. It's Christmas. They have children. Well, we could, I mean, I really don't understand it, you know. I don't understand. Anyway, so what I understand coming out of this Eastman case and a Tombo case, which is recently heard in December this year, and the Eastman case, the Court of Appeal, was heard in November, just last month, and before that, the High Court case was heard in August. So what I understand them to be saying is that if you have the equivalent of clause 17, which lays out the process before you come to the High Court, and you do not follow the process, you cannot come to the High Court and ask for any relief or remedy from the High Court in relation to CPEP company. So that is one. Two, the other issue with regard to the fraudulent misrepresentation and sending the matter to the DPP for his consideration, that was set aside, that was thrown out, and the Court of Appeal used very strong language to really, to show its displeasure, really, in the decision of the judge to take a matter that was untested, premature, and other language that they used to send the matter to the deep. So that was thrown out. So that criminal part has gone by the wayside. The other part about the corruption issue, that was never ventilated in the court. And you have to ask yourself, why? If you want to tell us that the reason you shut it down was because you were saying that we wasted the money, that the money is being wasted, and there's a corruption. So why didn't you argue that in the court?
But I would say, first of all, thanks to political promise, we have 400 million a year, 3.8 billion in back pay. That's not a, think about it now.
What are you talking about, the 400 something
This
million?
is the PSA, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's technically been no justification to say how that is good governance, only it was a political promise made so politics can be kept. Now, think about it. If it was good governance to pay people more than 5%, more than 4%, did they replicate that with anyone else? Even one other union? No. Why? Because good fiscal responsibility was we cannot afford to pay out all this money. But for the political promise that we made to the PSA, we'll send it out there. But here's the thing about the corruption that I can't stand, and this is similar to the Brent Thomas matter and a couple other matters. Because when you're talking about, oh, private corporation X doing something that with bad ethics, and we need to investigate them. All right, it might not be so easy because you are a third party trying to go and investigate these people. But we're talking about an arm of the government, once again, apparently being unable to investigate the government, is unable to investigate an arm of the government, a subsection of the government, a body that is directly engaged with the government. They're not paid by private donations, they're paid by the government. So they couldn't even say to take a month to try to investigate the matter.
They didn't want to do that.
Right? How much money did you save? How much money, how desperate were you to save money? Because this situation existed under your purview. There should be nothing easier to investigate. The political people, allegedly the corruption was at the behest of the previous party. So the people to protect it, mostly they're not in any ministerial position, right? How hard would it have been to investigate? Because the thing is, if you could have, you didn't even need to prove it in a court of law. You just need enough to definitively show the public, hey, there wasn't just smoke there was fire. And that would have justified, or might have been, I believe, enough justification for people to tolerate any sort of significant negative economic impact and societal impact that you see, like when the central bank governor says S, and you know, the low-income earners and the money circulation just not there, and the CPEP, shutting down CPEP could be part of it. The other thing is this, because it seems as though they don't care if members of the public perceives this as a political move rather than good governance. They don't care if people perceive the shutting down of CPEP as being political, right? Because look how sloppy it is.
Because you know why? Because there's half of this country that is happy that they're doing that.
Right, but here's the rub, and here's my warning, and I'm going to say it now. To the PSA and WASA, who thinks that they're sitting nice and pretty right now, despite the fact that, you know, one media house can't get Felicia Thomas on the phone to save her life right now. I wonder why she doesn't want to talk to the public, to the press. Here's the rub. If CPEP is allowed to be handled this way, and this is why I don't understand that people don't think through. You set a precedent. Don't you think that at some point that precedent can be used against you? So to the PSA and WASA, who for all intents and purposes are setting themselves up to look as though, hey, we are now giving our support politically, getting benefits for that support politically, not just the 10%, not just the back pay. Hey, they got a brand new discounted deal from TSTT in the papers yesterday morning. Right? The PSA, exclusive, that's the report. Maybe the report is wrong, but the report said the PSA members got an exclusive deal, which implies but I haven't seen the deal. Exclusive discounts that nobody else could get, not even other public servants, right? So what was CPEP perceived to be? Ghost gangs and people who were dependent on the PNM, who would, uphold the status quo and vote for the PNM. That was part of the problem, right?
That was part of the problem.
That's part of the problem, right? That's what we perceive to be. We haven't necessarily proved it yet. But the point is, can we not perceive WASA to basically be the same thing? Just look at the last election. So if the UNC can handle CPEP in this manner, at some point, they're going to lose an election. Maybe they get lucky like Ralph Gonsalves and have 5 consecutive terms. It doesn't matter. At some point, they will lose an election. And then, most likely in TNT, it's going to be a lot sooner than 5 consecutive terms. It might be 1 or 2 terms. If it's allowed to happen with CPEP, yes, I understand the HR rules would be different and maybe more stringent with WASA, but still, you don't think that on some level, in the court of public opinion, and on some level politically, if the PNM or somebody else gets back to the power, sees what the UNC did with CPEP, well, if we just do it carefully, just good enough, we could get away with doing that to WASA.
I'm glad you said that, because, Sean, I just want to say that I'm not saying that one is bad and the other one is good, because I don't put it beyond the PNM.
That's why I said perceive.
Yeah, that's why yes, and that's why I'm adding my voice to it. I am not saying that if the PNM, because it's really about votes. And clearly that is a good thousands of people who have children, who have, and so on, that you can capture with votes. And a lot of what moved the government to want to have shut it down and put in new independent contractors, which they would choose, I imagine, has a lot to do with the voting. I'm not saying that the PNM is not guilty of the same thing. What I'm saying is that the people who are suffering are the man and woman on the street who use as sort of like a chess game, use as pawns, and it's really unkind and unfair. This is how I look at it, it's really unkind and unfair to continue to use them for political gain and using on the face of it corruption, when in fact, as we now know, you see the law, just to close off on it, I just want to say this. I do not know what the Privy Council will decide, because even in the decision in Tombo's case, the judge did say that a lot will turn on the interpretation of the clauses in the agreement, okay? And so I do not know how they're going to look at the addendum, if the addendum is going to be read together with the original provision. And if so, I don't know what will be the outcome. What I do know, just as how Minister Padarat went quick, and paid off the CPEP. You know why he did it? Because of the law. So we have to look forward and look on. And again, I thank you very much for bringing this to light. And I think the headlines that you used for today's show was really very appropriate, which is the court of law versus the court of public opinion. And that really does sum it up.
Yeah, because that's where the argument was made. The argument was made in the court of public opinion because they could not do it in the court of law. And at the end of the day, that's the sticking point for me. That's what turns it into well, they're kind of just doing whatever recklessly to, no, this could be the sign of a greater problem because of how they implemented it, right? And the lack of transparency that most governments seemingly love to operate under. We are just left with more questions than answers. And that's why I said what I said about WASA, because when you align yourself with a government as a union, a political party, while being a union so closely, I'm sure history will show many examples of similar situations to how we perceive CPEP, right? And at what point will it end? Because now we are basically allowed a precedent to stand. Hey, we're not actually going to deal with this matter properly. We're going to let the court of public opinion deal with it. Is that what's going to be our public sector labor negotiations? Is basically going to amount to that in the future? Because we're basically asking for a lot more. I know that the Prime Minister said she's going to reduce the contract workers, but let's get real. The precedent set here could cause a lot of instability now moving forward. And at the end of the day, Karen is right. I think a lot of the times, too many of the workers get caught up in what they want, and they don't necessarily understand the longer-term effects that this could have on their employment, but they're happy to stand behind their union leaders to get their salary increases. And, well, for those unions that couldn't get the increases that the members want, look at you now, right? Do you think the situation is fair? But, hey, your former leader is not the Minister of Labor, just saying, right? So that's a lot of the things where the government sets up potentially the perception of conflict of interest, but then they're not doing anything to dissuade those perceptions, right? To kind of take us from the brink. No, don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. This is how we're going to show that that's not an issue. And now we have this mess. But the situation with CPEP, it seems small, right? But this is where it's not just the workers. To the rest of the population, it seems small. It's just CPEP. That has nothing to do with me. Yeah, the precedent set there, eventually that kind of mindset, give an inch, take a mile. It could expand further in unanticipated ways. All right, I know that this might be tricky because we've never done this before. We started off very late. We had a rerun just before. So some people might not realize that we're live December 24th, 2025. We are live right now, right here on WSN, the Content Capital. We will, hopefully, we'll open the phone lines so we could hear from you, the viewer.
Absolutely.
You don't have to talk about the CPEP stuff. We could just talk about Christmas. This is the last show before Christmas, and you won't see us until next week.
Oh.
So you could call in and just give your well wishes, your Christmas wishes. You could save the Happy New Year for next week, right? You could say, I mean, if you want to be a Scrooge, that's fine too, because I do wonder if some people might feel very Scrooge-ish right now, given everything that's going on. Yes. But with this, I mean, I guess this is one of those things where, to highlight, we have such a heavy topic on Christmas Eve. Yeah. On some level, it does seem kind of a shame. Yeah. However, it just points out, okay, is everybody having a bright Christmas? Let me not say a white Christmas, we're in the Caribbean, but a bright Christmas, a happy Christmas right now. All of these South Caribbean bacchanal fairs notwithstanding, you know, at the end of the day, I do wonder if that is distracting a bit much from, okay, how is the economy going, right? And what exactly is going on with the fight against crime? Because while crime seems to be down now, dare I ask, once the Americans do whatever they do and go home, and the state of emergency is over, are we confident that these crime levels will stand as they are? I don't know. They might, because I was pleasantly surprised the murder rate stayed down in between the states of emergencies, right? So it wasn't just the state of emergency, you know, as soon as it was over, it shot right back up. But I don't want to take it for granted that, you know, that would have persisted throughout the rest of the year if we didn't have another state of emergency. Which, by the way, talking about can't investigate, all of the threats against the government and all of the detention orders, and now we wait with bated breath. Oh, are we going to get a set of lawsuits like 2011, where we're going to see hundreds of thousands of dollars per case go out the door? I wonder who could have anticipated that. You know, I wonder, because it's not as though we've never seen this before with practically almost some of the same people, maybe.
Yeah.
So there is that as well that we're kind of waiting on. I don't know, Karen, what do you make of this Christmas? I'm not too sure. Well, we do have San Fernando line, so we'll take the call. Oh boy, this should be a good one. San Fernando, good morning, you're on the air. Oh, different San Fernando. Okay, good morning. Good morning.
Thank you. Christmas greetings and all the best for the new year.
Thank you.
I remember, I really enjoy your program this morning, and I remember the good old days in the 60s, Mrs. Karen Nunez. Sorry, are you speaking?
Yeah, no, don't worry. There's a delay on the TV.
Oh, okay. I remember in the 1960s when I used to work at Salvatore Building, Miss Nunez, Miss Teixeira's father. I remember him and Mr. Wilfred Best, two great men of Shelton Limited. I called to say, you know, you're making me forget. I called to say that Mrs. Nunez Teixeira, perhaps when I put down, you could tell me when I'm a pensioner and I cannot afford the many daily papers. I buy Sunday papers, sometimes most of which I'm disappointed. But what day and what paper do your article appear? That's the first thing I would like to find out. I'm not advertising for anybody. And secondly, I'm wondering, rather than talking to me and leaving me with open with, sometimes I'm a pensioner, of course I said, and leaving me open, why can't we invite, or WESN invite some people, they may be politically to one party, but how you point fingers at them, ask Mrs. Nunes pointedly why did so and so and so happen and did not happen, and let them answer for the benefit of our listeners. I think that might be a better idea, rather than you be talking to us. I was amazed with this, what Mrs. Nunes Teixeira said about the pharmacy board and all of that. And that, if I could go back and read that, that is why I ask you if I get your articles and what paper is it. I'll appreciate very much. So I'll buy one paper a week, and I could read that, because papers are too expensive now. But as I said, I don't want to repeat myself. I think for 1926, bring people in. Forget the political patronage. And I look at Mrs. Teixeira, Mrs. Nunes Teixeira, as the Larry King of Trinidad. He is, seriously, because she will ask pointed questions, answer me, rather than talking to me and leaving me in limbo. I wish that could be developed in 1926. 2026. Once again, have a very nice Christmas and all the best for 2026. Thank you. Bye.
Let me just say, I do not know the gentleman.
Yeah.
Okay? Let me just say.
Didn't solicit
All right,
you.
I did not ask him to call. I don't know the gentleman, but I do thank him very much for mentioning my father, Waldo Nunes. And he has been, as my family will know that, he and my mother, but my father in particular, because of his position in Shell and what he had to deal with, he has been a fantastic inspiration to me in terms of how I deal with matters. And I like when you talk about legacy, there's no better legacy that a parent can leave to a child. So I thank you really from the bottom of my heart. And yes, so that deals with that. With the other part, I have to say, and I hope I'm not being unfair, because I have not tried to send my articles to any other newspaper. So it would be unfair to say that they didn't take my articles. So that wouldn't be fair to say that.
You're not on staff.
No, I'm not on staff.
You write and you send it and they publish it.
Right. And I will be, being transparent. As I said, it's not because they wouldn't know other people would take my article. I haven't tried it, so I can't say that they won't. But I will say, yes, Omati Lida has I've never met her, never spoken to her, but she has my tremendous admiration. So whenever I think that I have something that I want to speak about that I think is of national interest, I will say that I do send it to the Express. And generally speaking, that they will publish it on the day that has the highest readership, which is the Sunday Express. But other than that, they will publish it otherwise. And as I said, that is, if you ask me directly, I've answered you as directly as I can. But it is no reflection on the other papers, because I do read them, and I do learn a lot from all the papers. I do learn from the different persons who contribute. I do learn from them. So that answers the question. And, with regard to what I do and how I do what I do, and I think that's why I do love ESN. And, Sean, you know that. I say that so often.
You said it just...
I said it today.
Today, yeah.
I said it today. I said, whenever I come on WESN, nobody, the Kareemers, but just to say that they never tell me what to say, they give me that freedom. And for that, I thank what you call this? The station. And I thank you very much.
All right, we have a ring on the line. We'll take the call. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning. Merry Christmas.
Good morning to Ms. Nunes Teixeira. Greetings to you.
Greetings to you too.
No, I was trying to call on the WhatsApp, but I wasn't getting through. So I had to use the other number. Now, what I want to say is this. And I mentioned it in our WhatsApp comment to you all. One of the main responsibilities of the government, and also an education curriculum goal, is the maintenance and preservation of the environment. So in that regard, CPEP is very important. What is amazing and disheartening is that those who create the laws, which are the MPs, are the same ones who are the instigators to break the law. Because if we look at this case whereby the chairman of CPEP told the CEO to renew the contract because he got cabinet approval, and then none existed, which would have meant that somebody higher up would have told him, well, this is what we plan to do. It sounds familiar. If I could draw your mind back to when Minister Al-Rawi was the Attorney General, and they were looking at the decriminalization of marijuana. 3 months before they even thought about bringing in that bill. They had a company. They had some gentlemen wanted to form a company to plant this thing for export purposes, and it was illegal at the time. So it says a lot about our system. And you see the first past the post system, whereby to the victor goes the spoils, the population now understanding how that works. Because in CPEP's case, they were trying to justify not having it. Why? To put in their people. Similarly with all the state boards. Meritocracy don't really exist in our country.
Yeah.
And all we are seeing is a cycle, because you can't tell me what it is the last first citizens board did wrong. Because they took that organization and they built it up real good under Mr. Smart. So, and one last thing, Sean.
Yeah.
We have a problem with people calling to troll calls. Always calling to fight on what somebody says, and they bring no ideas to the table.
Okay,
I was glad that you tried to shut down Mr. Faizabat for that last week. Last week Friday, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, we don't have, well, I don't necessarily say quite that way, because we don't want to dismiss people's perspectives out of hand. The only thing is, if there's nothing to work with, then that's when I do get
my take is this.
Yeah.
This program is for serious, independent thought in carrying this country forward.
I know, but you see, the problem
This
is
program is not a call to criticize people when they go against your party's point of view.
Yeah. But
I was glad that of the stance that you took, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. It's just,
Stance that you took,
I honestly can't remember. It's just very tricky because it's subjective. What is a serious input and what is not? Or I understand where you say people with political bias, you don't take them seriously. I can't necessarily dismiss it out of hand. Now, the context of whatever that situation was, I probably had more specific things on top of that to say. Or political bias in that specific situation was directly inappropriate, right? And it was reasons to say that. We have, I think, San Juan on the line. Caller, good morning. I do have to answer the last question to Mr. San Juan. We'll take San Juan first. Good morning, caller, you on here?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, Mr. Shara.
Morning.
All the best for the New Year's.
Thank you.
I could wish you all that, but I am out of it. Very sad. Because I was one of the lost work. I didn't win with this government from forestry.
Right.
And now I see like I could lego some booty by the hospital in Mount Hope because grass there about nearly 30 feet high. And I want to believe the whole country like that traveling about. So this Christmas, the country very heavy and dirty. But all the other festivities before was very clean. And that is a very serious thing, because this land here, if you don't know the history and the culture of this land, you cannot run it. You don't know the history of this land and the culture of the different races, you cannot run it. And you're going to put your people in serious, grave danger, which they are presently right now. The person who is speaking to this station is of First National people. We were disrespected first time historically by this government, Minister of Culture. We sent invitation for her to come to our visit. She never went. But you see, the group in Arima have a sweetbread chief. He want a chief like my war chief on the Northern Range. Anyway, let us don't go there. I look at this thing differently with the CPEP and all these young children that on the streets now playing with 9mm, that they shut down all these conservation codes and things. So I don't know where you're going with this crime fight, because they boost it up by sending home these people with the smallest salary, but they have to get money to pay the gang. So they had was to go there. Nobody talking about that. They had to get money to pay the gangs to form this big UNC and big government. Treasury didn't have money for this set of thing. Homeland Security. You had to bring Homeland Security because you go hire, instead of 2, you go hire 6 and 5. Salary at a payday. But it's all right. Our people here is very resilient. We will take pressure, and we will strike again. We'll come again strong. Right? We just had to pray hard. I'm also half Veni, born Trinidadian, and it's about 15,000 of us born here and here.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I say you must know the history of this land. And you wouldn't get involved in other people's business. You will see about your promises for this land. So she's on her way out already with that. Okay, you all be safe and be alert.
Yeah.
Good day.
Thank you, caller.
I just want to say this with regard to boards and board appointments. First of all, I do want to say openly, I think Mr. Smart, Anthony Smart, was a really fantastic chairman, and the reason why I could say that empirically is because regardless of the change of government, he has been retained as the chairman. He was retained as the chairman when there was a PNM administration. He was retained as the chairman when there was before that a UNC administration, and well, there are things at afoot which have caused him to resign. But I do want to say that not every board member is necessarily a person who is there as a sycophant. What you have to remember, a board, you do not want a board carries out the policy of the government. And what you do not want to have is persons on the board who are going to sabotage your efforts. Mm-hmm. And they can't do that. They can do that by delaying. You come and ask them and say, yes, of course, we're seeing about that. Don't worry. And they keep on, and then 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and they still have not dealt with the issue. And they can frustrate your efforts of the current government. So it is not necessarily completely true to say that a person who's on the board is necessarily a person who does not have the best interest of the country. And the best interest of the country is clearly, if they supported the government, they would have supported the policies of the government, and therefore in appointing members of the board, you would want to appoint persons who are competent. They have to have the competence. Clearly, they have to have the competence and the capability, but they also have to have similar. We have a quote from
right. I have something to say about that too. We started a vicious cycle where we perceive appointments as political and not merit-based, right? So now that we're on that horse, it seems difficult for the parties to get off of it, right? We have Shagona on the line. Caller, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to
Sorry,
you.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
My problem with CPIP is you pay two different people to do the same job. There are people in the public service doing this and whatnot. When this thing started with special works way back when, the people were employed in the agencies which had to do the work. The whole infrastructure for the employment was already there in the public service. And my next problem I have with it is if you look at what their work supposed to do, if you look at the state and the road and all these things, they are a terrible mess.
Yeah.
Right? So that is my problem with it. And I wouldn't have closed down the CPIP as such. What I want to do is hire them in the public service agencies which are supposed to do the work and make sure they do it. And any question?
No, caller. I mean, I think if you did something like that, you could have also, at the very least, exposed which gangs were the ghost gangs. Because like when you tell people, you have to report.
There could be no ghost gangs with that because you employ them in the public service as workers. So they get rid of that without even trying.
And so what I think that does speak to, I just want to say very quickly, thank you very much, is look at Carnival. I mean, it's so amazing. Carnival Tuesday is a set of confusion, bottles all over the place. You would never believe that there was Carnival in Port Spain.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Who's gonna clean it up?
No, but so what it means, it's not that the workers aren't good. It's that the structure and the systems are not good.
Right.
If you put in correct systems, you put in correct structures, those persons, and those who won't work, then you get rid of them. But so many of the persons are getting a bad name, and the bad name is coming to them rather than the system and structures that are put in place. So rather than shut it down for political gain, rather than shut it down to put your people there so that they will come, because I know I was inside government, so I know that is so, right? So rather than shut it down in order to put your people there and have additional votes, why shut it down? Why shut down the refinery? You could use that same example. Why shut down the refinery? Why shut down the refinery?
You want to make the argument.
Why shut it down?
That precedent.
Yes, why shut it down? Why are you shutting it down? Don't shut it down, restructure it, because I'm pretty certain that those persons who fall into that category, who are employed by CPEP, will by and large fall in line. And if it's any example that you can use, is the fact that after Carnival, Ash Wednesday, you cannot believe there was Carnival in Port Street. Not only that, the fact that people could complain now, look at the man talking about 30 feet grass, so you could get by, go and catch a goatee. The fact that you have that means that they're not working, which means that they do work when they do work. So I am not going to be one of those who is going to say, you know, when I was in Parliament, I wouldn't say who the opposition person was, but I mean, it was really offensive. So I remembered it. He said, what, you wouldn't employ people to paint stones? I mean, how you, yeah, but you see now, you want them same people that used to paint stones for you, because what you were upset about was those people were employed by the PNM government to have their PNM supporters. And I am not saying that is right. Do not get me wrong, I am not saying it's not right.
But you're saying where it could be transferred now under the new government, so they're doing the same thing.
Yes, and instead of you shutting it down so you could put in your own people, why don't you restructure the program so that what that gentleman just said from...
under the public service?
Yes, under the public service. You don't need to shut it down to do that, but you see you have to shut it down because you have to put in your own contractors.
Also, by changing it that way, you're kind of like enticing or baiting people. Hey, come on, you have to report it now if you want to continue on the new system. But by shutting it down completely, right, the argument could be made, well, it's not ghost gangs. Those people just decided to move on because they didn't like what you did to them. So there's no way to say, okay, is the lack of engagement under whatever the new program with the local government ministry
upkeep of public spaces.
Right? Is it because they were ghosts, or is it because people did not want to apply? Right? That is obfuscating the issue. But if you just said, oh, we're going to do what Mr. Shavona said, transfer them under the public service, right? Now, why you don't want to transfer? Maybe there are all ghost gangs, and just by handling it differently, you could even get different information.
If you want to do that,
if you want to win the court of public opinion, that will make a big difference. You have another San Fernando line. Caller, good morning. I still have a lot to get through from the first call.
Oh, God.
Caller, good morning.
Hello, good morning again. Me here again.
Yes.
I spoke about Karen's father, Wilfred Bress.
Yes.
Well, Wyatt. And I remember, you know, we were young in those days, working in the accounts department in Shell Trinidad Limited. And at a certain hour in the evening, we used to look through the opaque glass. Karen know what I'm talking about, and along the corridor. And we say, hey, boy, she's going down. And suddenly about three of us will fly out the room into the corridor, go down by the tea lady, just to see Karen coming back up the corridor. It's such a pleasure. Merry Christmas to you all once again.
I did want to say, because you brought up a good point, and this comes up every now and then, why don't we get the politicians or people like that to talk about issues, or even the political analysts? The short answer is they're not coming.
You know, and you know what the truth of the matter is? I think there are very few. I needed to say this, and I've said this, I think, to you.
Yeah.
When we had our conversations on the phone, which go on for at least an hour, would you believe? But I have said this to Sean, that there are very, and I am speaking from experience, there are very few people who do things that are not in self-interest, whether it is status, whether it is power, whether it is money, or whether it is anger, the resentment. Some position they wanted, they did not get. Some contract they wanted, they did not get. Something that makes them feel a sense of anger towards some MP that they wanted and they did not get. I know what I'm speaking about. So unfortunately, and you are going to be hard pressed to find persons who are willing to come and speak to an issue where they do not have a hidden agenda. And I can assure you from my own experience, they do have an agenda. And I want to just say one more thing, please.
Quick.
For Christmas, this is my Christmas gift. Prime Minister, I was so gratified, and I mean that genuinely. Yes, you want to know what I'm going to say now. Gratified that you're going to report, you're going to publish the Commission of Inquiry into CL Financial. It means so very much to me, and I hope that whatever I said today does not in any way discourage you from doing what is right.
I just need to finish the point. As Karen said, they have their own agenda. When there's an issue in the press, they know that's what you're calling them for the interview for. 99 times out of 10, they don't want to take that interview. 99 times out of 10, they don't want to take that interview, right? It's like pulling teeth. Why? Because when they just give a comment to the papers, that's something they could control. But an interview has back and forth questions where they might end up stumbling. Maybe because they might not want to tell the truth. Maybe because they might want to tell some Nancy story. I don't know. They rarely come. Now, I do believe we did have the opposition leader on AM Prime on Monday, Penelope Beckles, right? But very rarely do politicians, particularly government politicians, I don't know why the opposition is also so tight-lipped right now, but particularly government politicians, right? They do not want to face the scrutiny of the reporters. That's one of the reasons why I question are there so many post-cabinet press briefings and the Prime Minister is not apparent. As much as it was not enough, I won't say that he did it enough, but I will say he did it, so I have always praised Dr. Rowley for taking questions from the media, even in situations where he knew he was not going to get easy questions.
And even if he knew that he was going to get angry.
And there were situations even in their political meetings where he got some tough questions. So I know that they didn't necessarily screen everything to get softballs for him beforehand. And that's one of the things. I'm not saying he did it enough. I'm not saying that he did it to a satisfactory degree, but he at least did it. Right? He didn't do interviews either, but he did make himself available to the press. Right? We do have to go on the line. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Nunes, Sarah, and Mr. Small.
Morning. Merry Christmas.
Well, I just called to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a very good New Year, hopefully. And may the leaders of this country take our wisdom from the Lord and let the Lord direct them into making the right choices and do the right thing, because the right thing is always the right thing to do. And may God bless all our leaders, our opposition, everybody. And we all try and have a good, peaceful, and very safe holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Oh, that was nice.
So, thank you so much. That's one of our first OG callers, talking point. Like, when I say first, I'm talking probably first month, maybe first week that we were taking calls, right? So it's always good to hear from you. Also, the professor from Chagonis is one of the long-standing callers as well. To hear from you all that you all are still well and everything is going good, because you want to keep hearing from people. You're kind of worried when you don't hear from your friends, right? Now, there's a couple of things I wanted to say, because Karen, you brought up all politicians a lot of times have their own agendas, right? The thing that the caller brought up with the company, when they were looking at decriminalize marijuana, that probably happens more than we know. And of course, there's a whole host of various suspicions and speculations and conspiracy theories just locally. But case in point, this thing is so rampant in America. Two politicians, one on each side. Of course, famously, Nancy Pelosi is accused of insider trading because her return on investment or the increase in net worth year on year is like something over 100%, right? They say it's the husband, but regardless. But Republican Dan Crenshaw, his net worth or return on investment apparently every year is like 40-something%. And what a lot of conservative-minded people are questioning is you have professional stockbrokers and stock traders who cannot get returns at that level. How are you getting those returns, right? It's so bad that there are apps to track how these politicians invest so that you just invest what they invest in. So now people are upset since Nancy Pelosi is no longer going. They're losing one of their biggest meal tickets, right? But the point is, when they were looking to, this is how it works, right? It's not insider trading in the Martha Stewart sense, but it is in the sense of, oh, we know what legislation is coming down the pipe. So we will position ourselves potentially to benefit. Remember when they were now talking about decriminalize marijuana, and then it came out that they registered a company that was basically branded to sell marijuana, but it seems as though maybe they changed the law or they didn't. The point is, somebody wanted to get ahead of the situation, whether it came to pass or not, how much it's going to cost them, right, as opposed to the potential returns. And that's one of the things that is done. So, of course, now, when Karen says, for your people, one has to ask the question, exactly if, how, when, where, what are potential politicians of one side or the other, in this case it's the UNC, benefiting from moves being made, legislation being carried out? We don't know. We don't know. We do know that it happens. We just don't know to what degree and how widespread it is here. But we have similar questions with regards to certain legislatures and ministers, and it's the same thing. Your salary is of public record. How is your net worth increasing so much? That's the problem. That's the problem. And usually there's not a good answer. And the thing with Dan Crenshaw is, you might want to say, oh, well, you know, people just hate Nancy Pelosi. That's fine, but the people who are asking the question about her are also asking the question about one of their own, because these are conservative ex-military who's looking at a conservative ex-military, and they're saying, hey, it's not adding up in the same way. So to me, that says it's not about politics then. It's literally about the question, to what extent do we have those questions? How many gifts can you get to increase your net worth when you were living technically on a MP salary or a cabinet minister salary for your entire life, apparently? How much investments do you have? How rich is your wife? Right? How rich is your family? For all of them? For all of them? So both sides, they have those questions
I have to tell you something. That's a very sensitive issue that you're
I know, but hey, that's my Christmas gift.
Right? And I just,
bam!
Yes, and I have to say, just for clarification to the public, and again, I want to thank the Prime Minister for allegedly. I saw
I didn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so let me just be very, very clear. When the words use insider information, you see the example you use, Martha Stewart. All of those dealing with, you see, Nancy Pelosi, that's the example you use. In other words, you have information on the stock exchange that they are going to increase the value of, you have another Sanford, I'm not calling again.
Well, wait, I actually was not thinking about click on Karen at all.
Yeah, but Karen was thinking about it.
As she just said, that the Prime Minister said she was revealing the report, that did not go into my mind at all. And I know that it's probably not believable what I just said there, but I guarantee you it's the truth for whatever it's worth. We have Sanford on the line. This has to be the last call because we're over time. Caller, good morning, on here.
Good morning to my two favorite people on the television.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
even though some days like yesterday I might not be his favorite, but he still know I love him.
I know he does. And he's already what you think about him is really true. We get along extremely well.
Yes. He is. And I'm not saying it because it's Christmas. and don't play your blushing. You are one of the brightest sparks in television today.
Oh gosh, thank you
serious.
Much. Thank you so much. Oh gosh.
People have to. This program is it's so. Sometimes I can't describe it. Sometimes Sean's passion gets down into where it needs to get. I mean, and then he would cross some of us sometimes, but at the end of the day, that is what we need. That is what we need in journalism.
Yes.
That is what we need in journalism.
Oh, Lord.
And I wanted to also tell Mr. Peter Sean, Merry Christmas to me. I listened to his program, the program that you both of you all on it. And that program is so informative. The last one I looked at it with you all there, it was so good. When you all had that lady talking about the nexus between artistry and business. That was so good. So all I want to say is Merry Christmas to both of you.
Thank you very much.
And I hope I see you all in the new year.
For sure.
God spare life.
Well, and you will see us next week, right?
No, of course.
Yes. Okay.
You need a rest. You need a rest.
No, but January 1st, after the January 1st, we will be taking a little over a week.
Well?
Yes, we will.
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah. So just
Yes,
so you
Karen.
know,
So you could,
just so you know.
so you could kick up your foot a little bit more.
I love doing this, so you know that? You know, teaching is a communication skill, right? So I love, ask my grandson, poor thing, he just gets a lot of that from me. But I do love communicating and I do love sharing, so it's not work for me. It's not work at all. I love doing it and I love doing it on this program.
I'll say,
I'm going to say to both of you, thank you very much for putting your time and your heart into this, into what you all are doing. Thank you very much and have a Merry Christmas.
You too.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Okay, take care.
two things to say. One, yeah, on some level, this is something that I dreamed of doing. I never thought that it would happen, right?
Oh.
And it happened. It kind of happened a lot easier than I expected, all things considered. But with that said, in part, it's because of WSN, as Karen said. So I'm gonna throw it there. They don't tell me what to say. Now, granted, if anything, you know, the executive producer, he's more like, hey, what about this issue? When you talk about that, he might be throwing ideas out there, but he's not saying, hey, don't talk about that, don't talk about that, don't talk about that, right? And perhaps one of the things, to be fair, I don't know if, I think there are a couple other guys that could do it, but because of the situations that they're in, right, they might not necessarily have the freedom that I do to do what I do. And when they try to do it at times, they got pushed down for it. I'll say that. So because, you know, corporate overlords are a thing now, right? And media houses have to worry about their business model. So it's the advertisers' concerns and the private sector concerns, and then who kissing up to who and all of that jazz, right? It's a very big balancing act. That's one of the reasons why I have reached the point now, I don't care about not getting any politician, whether opposition or government, on my show, right? I will try not to do anything to necessarily disadvantage the station. But I've reached a point where, look, and I borrowed this from Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, who's also now a big-time YouTube political commentator in his own right. I have an issue to talk about. If you don't want to come to talk to me about it, the door is always open. I don't have to reach out to you. The door is always open. I'll take anybody on, right? I have no issue giving anyone a chance to say their piece. I have had all on as much as possible. If you don't want to come on and talk about it, that just makes my job easier because I don't need to take your perspective on. It's not my responsibility to research your perspective and replicate it as perfectly as possible. If you're a politician or a public speaker, it's your job to present your case. I'll present my case, and if you don't want to engage with me, then I don't necessarily need to care about your side of the situation. I'll try as much as possible to see it from as many sides as possible, objectives as possible. But I'm not here to be an advocate for any one political party. You have your biases, your agendas. You want someone to present it, you should do it. That's not my job, right? And if I need different perspectives, I try to get people like Karen Shashera, who I know is going to give me an unbiased view. It doesn't matter if they're PRM or if they're UNC. If they're wrong, they're wrong. If they're right, they're right. When she's ready to praise, just like how she praised the Prime Minister just now, she's ready to praise because she wants the CL financial report out,
Yeah,
right? And when it's time to criticize, like she did with the predecessors of this administration, when she finds things she doesn't like, she'll criticize it. If you disagree, we have the callers to give us your perspectives. If we missed out on your perspectives, so your perspectives could be heard. So thank you for the praise on the show. I do think that there's a lot of challenges in our media landscape, so it's not entirely fair to say that the rest of the media landscape is that bad. However, I will say this. I appreciate the praise. I actually think it's a shame and it is somewhat scary if I am so far ahead of so many others, because in my mind, I'm not that good. So the question is now, what is it as an industry that we're not doing, right? How widespread is it? I feel that the talent is there, at least in some cases. I can't say for definitively. But what does that say if that's your perception? Because I will speak for myself. I do not ever like the thought. I know a lot of people love being the smartest guy in the room. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, then we have problems with that room. That's how I'll put it, right? I shouldn't be the smartest guy in the room. I should not be the brightest star, you know, in the sky. If that is the case, if I have to hold that position, then we have problems, because that ain't, to me, to hold that position, that's not my role. That's not my skill set. That's not who I am. I'm not that guy, That's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people will perceive me differently. But I would hope that we could get, I'm sure there are more brilliant people out there, and I hope we could get more people out there that also have passion, right? I think one of the things, the first caller, and I'll close with this, when he described your father and one other gentleman as great men, and I had this thing where I had a thought, why does it seem as though we don't have as many great people? Because there were a lot, when you look at arts, culture, business, politics, science, everything, and you look at yesteryear and the giants of our nation of yesteryear and how they were revered and how society was structured and knew everybody and gave everybody a certain amount of recognition and respect, right? And how we don't necessarily have that quite the same way now. Is it that we lack good people? And I would argue, no, it's not that we don't lack good people. For whatever reason, the good people keep their heads down and they don't want to stand out. And maybe we do need to look at that, right? I have been afforded a position where I could stand out. Karen could stand out, right? And at times people will like it and at times people won't. But too many people are afraid to stand out. So what ends up happening is the ones who do stand out tend to be the ambitious ones that have an agenda. So we get what we get, right? We need to find a way to get more of our best and brightest in the spotlight, as opposed to just the people who have the ambitions to be in charge. But heavy topic. Thanks for all of the callers. Merry Christmas to everybody. I think we should end it here, right? This might be a good spot to end. Merry Christmas, everybody. Karen, thanks for joining me on Christmas Eve. You know, there was a part of me that's like, because I don't think we ever did a Christmas Eve episode with Karen, right? So I was like, oh gosh, I hope she's not busy. Because it's Christmas Eve, I can understand if you're busy, but her commitment to the people and to the show, and that's what it is. And I actually view to the callers your commitment to the show so, yes. and to the country.
Appreciate that.
Very much appreciate that, folks. This is Talking Point on WESN. Wishing you for one final time, Merry Christmas. We'll see you just before the new year, but stay safe over this long weekend. Enjoy it. Make it a great Christmas. Have a great Christmas. You could do so if you try, right? Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other throughout this Christmas day. Be nice this Christmas just for the sake of being nice. Don't consider anything else right now, right? And we will see each other before the year ends. Bye-bye.